Welcome to the Collective Genius Podcast, the show for real estate investors who are looking to scale.
Welcome in. Welcome back to the Collective Genius Podcast. The Collective Genius, as most of you know, is the community that high-level real estate investors come to continue to grow and scale their business. And I have coined this weekly podcast as conversations with a genius. That might be a little far-fetched for our next guest, but I'm joking, clearly. Our next guest is one of my favorites, who has become a great friend. I think is by far the best leader that I have been around, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, which we'll get into. But without further ado, let's just get right into it. Please welcome Mr. Eric Brewer. Welcome, my friend.
What's up, buddy? It's good to see you.
How are you?
Thanks for having me.
You too.
I'm doing well.
I'm excited because I get to talk to my friends on a weekly basis, and I'm also excited that those that listen to the podcast get an opportunity to learn more about my friends and hopefully can become friends with you as well. I know you've got a lot to share, and I appreciate you joining me. This podcast has been a long time coming, and I think you and many others have pushed me to continue to do new things, and starting to do this has just been, it's been an easy thing to look forward to. So let's get right into it, my friend. Let's start with where you're out of and what your markets are, and your niche, and kind of just give a little background so people that don't know you can get to know you.
Yeah, I'll start with, I guess, just where I'm from and our markets. That's pretty easy stuff for me. So I am from central Pennsylvania. So if you think about where Philly is, most people know where Philadelphia is. Baltimore and Pittsburgh. I'm like right in the middle of all three. So I'm just north of Baltimore, just south of Harrisburg, the capital, about 3 hours east of Pittsburgh, and about an hour and a half west of Philly. So we're on the southernmost eastern portion of Pennsylvania, and we operate in those markets. So we cover most of Pennsylvania, although we're predominantly focused on about a 2-hour radius where we are, but we touch literally every portion of the state, and even do northern Baltimore County. So predominantly we're focused within a 2-hour radius, but also do probably 24 deals a year in Baltimore County, and looking to expand. And then because of our marketing in like the Philly area, we get a little carryover into Jersey as well. Probably do 20 deals a year in New Jersey.
What type of deals?
All of them. It seems like we are, I started as a fix and flipper. So when I got into real estate, which would have been 2000. This was February 2006. I came from the car business. I had about a 10-year career in the car business. My business partner and the founder of our company back then was a car guy. So car guys go to auctions, buy cars, fix them up, and retail them. And that's what we did. So we went to auctions, share of sales, and worked the MLS pretty heavy back then, and started as a fix and flipper in about 20. So obviously everybody knows what happened in 2008. There was nothing easier to do than to buy a property off the MLS in 2008. That carried on to about 2014, 2015. There was a big influx of people coming back into real estate investing and flipping. And I noticed I was dealing with multiple offers on houses that people were begging me to buy for the last 7 years. That's when I found CG. I was looking for an answer to direct-to-seller marketing. And then we started doing, in about 2010, I sort of discovered and built what a lot of people know as Novations today. So we started doing Novations and fix and flip. And then since then, we've done fix and flip, wholesale, Novations, sub two, all of them. And because of our market, we're not in a huge market. I mean, I got to touch like 13 counties just to get to about 2.5 million people. It really requires that type of creative tool belt to try and squeak out the amount of deals that we do on a year in a relatively small market. So we do a little bit of everything.
Were you born and raised in York?
Not in York, but then in this area. I was born in Gettysburg, and both of my parents were from Gettysburg. Went to the same high school. My mom was 16, 17. My dad was just turning 18. They separated. My mom ended up getting into like a trade school for dental assisting. So we moved to York. I think I was just getting into kindergarten. So whatever that is, 4 or 5. Now I'm a little advanced. So I think I was in kindergarten when I was like 2. You were probably closer to like 11, but
You're trying to add that genius status here. I get it. I see what.
But yeah. So we moved to York when I was 5, and then we've stayed around this area since about 5 years old. So not born, but raised in this area.
It's home for sure. And when I tell people that are in the group that we have people doing hundreds of deals, and people always go, yeah, of course they can do hundreds of deals in these big cities. I go, really? That's sounds like a self-limiting belief to me, because I know people that are in places like York. They're obviously, you've got a lot of surrounding areas there, but a great real estate market. Having been there and seen the rolling hills, beautiful place to call home and raise a family for sure.
Yeah.
As you were that 2-year-old in kindergarten and continuing to grow up, what is it? I know you have, we'll get into your car background because I think that's super important for your journey. But I don't think I've ever asked you this, is what did you really, outside of sports, we all know that we wanted to be athletes, but outside of sports, what was what did you want to do?
When I was little?
Yeah, like, let's say middle school, where you start to, you go to those career fairs and things like that in the school, and they start to say, hey, you could be this or you could be that. What do you remember? Like, not the first time you said, I want to be a football player, I want to be a cop, or whatever kids said back then, but where you were like, this is what I really wanted.
So this is where the podcast will take a definitive turn.
Okay.
So most people would tell you a modified version of the truth, right? And you know me, I am in constant search of truth. And I would tell you, I wanted nothing more when I was in middle school to be liked. And so what did that mean, right? I wasn't thinking about being a baseball player, a basketball player, a school teacher, a fireman. I would have been whatever the group of people or the group of students or the school or the teachers wanted me to be for me to be accepted. The reason I think it's important to talk about that is, number one, I don't think enough people talk about that stuff.
Sure.
And we end up living in obscurity and never really talking about like the real important things that shape or change our life. So where that manifested, right, is as a youth, because between the age of 5 and the end of middle school, so I went to high school, I went to 7 different schools. So almost every year I moved. Now, we never moved far, but like in my area, when you go from, let's say, West York schools and you go to Spring Grove, it's like a pretty significant cultural change. Not like, they're eating different foods and speaking different languages, but they dress differently. They probably support different sports teams. There's a different like ethnic makeup of the school, right? Some of the schools I went to were almost predominantly white. And then other ones I went to, it was reversed, right? I was most of I was in city schools, kindergarten to second grade. And you and I have a lot of shared background there, right? That's what kind of brought you and I together. So yep. I just wanted to be liked. That was it. The only thing I was worried about was fitting in, having friends, and feeling like I belonged. So I know that might not be the most popular or politically correct answer, but that is what I remember about being in school and all the way up to middle school. I didn't care about anything other than just fitting in.
So this is where the conversation part comes into this podcast, that I'm not interested in just talking about the normal real estate stuff, because I think that answer says a lot about your growth as a human being. Because I bet I could be wrong on that. Would you have answered that way 10 years ago?
No, you know why? I was still worried about being liked. Or
What would you have said? You would have said, I wanted to be a firefighter or whatever.
I wanted, 10 years ago, I might have said an entrepreneur. I might have said, I grew up in a very, I don't think we owned our first house until I was 14. So like real estate wasn't even, like, I didn't even know what it was. I had a house. I knew about that, but like definitely wasn't, being a real estate investor. I didn't know any business owners. My parents were W-2s. They went to work, for someone else. And I always had a roof over my head. I always had clothes on my back, and we always had, food to eat. But I grew up in a pretty modest upbringing. So all the people I knew were like construction workers, or honestly, when the reason we moved, I talk about it a lot of times like it's a negative or it's not the most desirable thing, but it was because my stepfather at the time, who married my mother when I was 4, was always like leveling up, right? And each time he'd get a better job or make more money, we moved to a better place. We moved to a nicer home. We moved to a bigger place. We moved to a safer neighborhood. We moved, like, each time our situation got better. None of that mattered to me as a kid, right? And if you think about like, anytime you take a 6 to 14-year-old away from their little core group of friends that they play tackle football with out in front of the apartment building, it's like the end of the world, right? Like we never imagine we'll be able to make another best friend. So I probably just wanted to be, my stepdad was a salesman. So I did know that I knew that each time our situation got better, it was directly attributed to his ability to outsell everybody else. Quite the unconventional salesman. He worked at a place called Stereo Discounters back in the day, and he sold car stereos and speakers and amplifiers. And like, he wasn't the most charismatic person in the world. He was a super technical person. So he would always sell to the technical client, right?
Yeah.
And the reason he would always sell the most expensive stuff. And I think he sold the most expensive stuff. And we teach us a lot of now with our salespeople is the biggest objections that most salespeople can't overcome is the internal one. Like they actually don't think their clients should move forward. Right? So they're certainly not going to get them to do something they wouldn't do themselves.
Sure.
But he always bought the most expensive stereo equipment because that was like his thing. So he was super comfortable selling. I'll never forget, I was probably 12 years old and he bought like $25,000 speakers. They were called Apogees, and they were like these 7-foot tall ribbon speakers. That might have been where the marriage between my stepfather and my mom got a little dicey. And the next time we moved, it wasn't because we were moving up. We were moving back down. But yeah, so I don't know that I wanted to be a salesman, but I saw my family's life improve over the course of year over year because the provider of the household was able to sell.
So I learned something that I didn't know about you today, because the way that you came to that, it's almost like you're sitting on my CG couch right now and I'm giving you a little therapy, because think about what you just said.
I think it's the first time I've said it. I don't know that I ever put 2 and 2 together.
Well, I mean, we both are friends with Larry Yatz, and a lot of, who we are today comes from trauma, but also the influence there. I'm putting 2 and 2 together there. You were like me up until the 3rd grade. I was in a lot of schools, and like you, I wanted to be liked because I wanted to go into this new school and be liked and create new friends because I missed my old friends. And that's what you do as a kid. You need to have friends to play kickball with and all those things that we did back in the 80s. But the second part of that really helped me understand why you have succeeded and continued to grow as a salesperson specifically. Now, obviously, as a leader, we'll get into that more. You've evolved that piece, but the sales part, you saw your situation constantly getting better because of someone's effort in sales, while you were also becoming someone that established trust with other people quickly to become friends. I mean, put that together. It creates a salesperson. If you're writing a book about how to create a great salesperson, it would be that.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, good story. I appreciate you sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now you're in high school. It sounds like you really just want to be liked. But what were the people that you wanted to be liked by? What were they going to do, and did you follow them?
By the time I got to high school, now I'm at York Suburban High School, which in our county is super affluent. And the area that we live is not that way. We live in like this little corridor of this school district where, let's say at this point now, my stepfather built a new house. It was a brick rancher, still remember the address, 1290 Toan Road. And I don't know, he probably built it for $125,000. He laid the foundation himself, and he had someone frame and put the brick, and he did some of the work himself. And let's say, if that house was 125 back then, the average home in that school district was probably 3 times the value. So it was a nice house for us, nicest house we ever lived in. But it was very inexpensive compared to the other schools that I went to. It wasn't unusual for me to go to school and see someone pull up for their 16th birthday in a Ferrari, right? Or a Lexus, or, back then the Toyota Supra. I remember there was a kid that had a Toyota Supra, and I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, I've never even seen that unless it was on TV, and a Mitsubishi Conquest TSI Turbo. And I said, I went to school.
Stop right there for 1 second. So I want you to continue that story, but I have to know, what was your, like, for me, growing up where I grew up, the Nissan Maxima 1986, it talked to you. I remember it like it was yesterday. The door is ajar, like that. But that were the people in my neighborhood that made it, right? 86 black Nissan Maxima. What was yours?
Man, I've always had an eye for a car. The Maxima was tough. The 86, 87, it was a little boxy.
It was small.
Load-in spoiler, Chevy Beretta 2-door, the 3.1 liter. It was like a V6. The Ford EXP hatchback, Toyota Celica was a big deal back then. The Supra, the Conquest, those were all like in the Mitsubishi Eclipse GT.
You had a lot of them. I've laser focused in on that Maxima. I eventually got that Maxima later, a little later years on that. But that was the one. Like, I knew I made it when I got a Maxima. And then you hit that goal and you go, okay, what's next? But yeah. All right. So you're at the affluent high school, Lambos and everything else.
Yeah. So like I ended up, going to becoming friends and spending time at some of these houses. And I remember like getting into these houses and being like, yo, first of all, what do your parents do? And where are they? I've been here 4 times this week. I slept here 2 times and I haven't seen anybody. And they're like, oh, they're in France for a month. And my father owns, and I was just like, damn. And, I would just ask if I could borrow a pair of swimming trunks, like go swim in their pool. So I was in shock by 2 things, just the size of these homes, 10,000 square foot homes. We live in a 1,500 square foot house. And I do distinctly remember I would never see anybody's parents. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it, right? It was just like this amazing freedom that they had, and we could all party at their house and throw ragers. But that was probably the first time I like saw a glimpse you remember the world was smaller back then. We didn't have access to social media, and
Right.
cell phones weren't even like a normal thing. So, I mean, outside of like the 10-block radius that I would walk or ride my bike in, I didn't know those neighborhoods existed. I didn't know like people could own their own businesses. I thought like everything was just a Walmart, and there was like this magical place where all the people that own businesses lived, but it certainly wasn't in York, PA. So I kind of opened my eyes a little bit to like what's possible even in a small town, because I was seeing it firsthand. I saw these homes that were to me like MTV cribs, and they were a half mile away from where I lived. So
Were they all business owners? Is that what they ended up? You went
yeah,
ask what?
there's some doctors, dentists. The one guy I remember specifically owned a pallet company. I was like, I never even thought where pallets come from, but I was like, it's made out of like scrap wood. Like,
Somebody's making them.
yeah, that somebody's buying them, a lot of them. And that was one of the wealthier, the two people I spent the most time with. His dad was a doctor, and the other guy's family owned a pallet company. And they lived in amazing homes. They were, extremely wealthy. And I just happened to be, friends with those two guys.
So obviously you didn't choose the pallet path, but I do know that you, out of high school, you went to the military, correct?
Yeah.
And that decision was because of why?
So so in my sophomore year, so we lived in that house I told you about for about a year. Right around my sophomore year, my stepdad, who has now raised me from the age of 4 to, what am I? I'm a sophomore, so I'm 14. I was a young, I didn't turn 18 till after I graduated. So I think I'm 14 at this point. And my stepdad and my mom divorced. And for whatever reason, neither of them were home. I think he moved out, and my mom was working like an hour away, and like soon after was dating someone else after they separated and was just never home. So I was home by myself, like total recipe for disaster as a 14-year-old kid. Mind you, the kids that I hang out with now are loaded and their parents are never home.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like, well, how's this going to go? Well, I can tell you how it went. I missed 67 days of school in my sophomore year, started drinking, smoking weed, done basically everything. And it took me, I never recovered, quite frankly. I barely graduated high school. I had to do summer school 2 years in a row. Started my senior year in an 11th grade homeroom, had to get a tutor to get caught up. I didn't move into 12th grade until a month or two into my senior year, graduated on time. When that just carried over, right? Once school was over, I literally had no reason to be responsible. So I went on June 7th, 1993 was when I graduated. I was on summer break for about 17 months. And I just partied and went to the beach, and I was at senior week, and there was a couple people that had jobs, so they lived still close by, and I would just hang out with them and sleep on their couch. And then I tried a couple jobs. I had a construction job, which back then paid really well. It was like $9 an hour. So this is 1993, 1994. Ever told you this story?
No.
And so I'm working in this like crack house doing construction, and the developer was converting it into apartment buildings. So it's like it has to be, I don't know, a 60, 70 room building. It's called the Dutch Kitchen, or it was called the Dutch Kitchen back then. It's close to the hood, but now it's in a redevelopment area, and someone bought it and they were redeveloping. They were going to put apartments in and mixed use. And I'll never forget this day. I'd been there about a month and a half, and I was making good money, but it was hotter than, it was just hot.
No air because it was construction, right?
Yeah, and you had to wear jeans, and you had to wear like a sleeve shirt, and I had this tool belt on, and I'm standing on a bucket, and I got this hammer, and I'm just hammering the ceiling, demoing the ceiling. Shit's falling out, piss, and just needles, and I'm like, And all you would do is from the time you started work at 6 a.m. is work until you heard, I'll never forget the dude's name, Barry. And he would announce when it was lunchtime. And Barry announced it was lunchtime. And me and my buddy Scott Smith, God rest his soul, who has passed away, were both working there. And we finished, you go, oh, dude, lunch. I'd like take my tool belt off, like drop that thing right where it is beside the bucket, grab my little water cooler, and I go down, and there was like these Continental Food Service trucks that would pull up, and they like open the door, and they go to them.
The aluminum burgers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crock burgers, Danishes, OJs. And I think I had like a little Coleman lunchbox, and I got myself like a little burger off that truck. And like everybody would line up against the wall, because when you sat up against the building, the roof would create shade. So we're all sitting there, and I think you only got a 30-minute lunch. And then Barry's ass would come back around, and I gotta get up. And he's like, he's the foreman. He's getting, get back to work. Get back. And he's screaming and yelling. There's like 40 of us lined up on the wall. So everybody stands up, and like single file, if you're standing here and you look down, you'd see, boom, they go in the door. Boom, they go in the door. Boom, they go in the door. So I'm like, I don't know, halfway down the line, right? And they're booming. I'm like, I just kept walking. And everybody else was hanging that right to go in the building. I took my ass to the car, and I never came back. Like the whole time I'm walking, I'm like, I don't want to go back up in that bathroom. I don't want to go back up and swing that hammer. My shoulders hurt. I was hot. I had dirt in my eye. I swallowed like 4, like God knows what bugs, roaches. And I was just like, dude, I can't do this. And it was funny. I didn't say a word to nobody. I didn't make eye contact. The first 23 dudes in front of me made that right. And I kept walking, and I got in my car and I went home, and I called my dad. And I was like, Dad, I don't know what to do, man. Like, and he said, my dad's retired military. He was chief warrant officer in the U.S. Army for 30 years. And he said, I know it's not what you want to hear, but you get 3 meals a day. They're gonna teach you something. It's a great way to build a career. He's like, listen, I've built an amazing life off of it. I've traveled, and I don't know. Within a couple of weeks, I went to a recruiter. I took my ASFAB. I tested fairly well, so I had I could pick whatever job I wanted. I ended up doing 68 Lima. Back then, that was avionics communications repair. And that was it. I signed up. And I went off to boot camp, did my time in the military, came home, and there wasn't really any civilian application for my job working on Chinook helicopter communication devices. And I was thumbing through the newspaper one day, and I saw a classified ad, and it said lot porter. And I read it, and it was like a Mercedes Toyota dealer, and you would deliver cars. And I was like, oh, cars are cool. I like driving cars. So I set up an interview. I went in, and the only clothes I had were like, you remember Jenko, like the old denim, like clothing line. I'll never forget my prized possession was a Jenko denim vest and the matching jean shorts that hung just below the knee. So I couldn't wear that. And then I had my Army uniform, and I had my pinstripe suit I wore to my senior prom. So I wore my pinstripe suit for my senior prom to, at this point, like a $8 an hour job. And I'm sitting in the middle of the waiting room. And if you've ever been to like a car dealership, like the service waiting area is just a stress-filled crock pot. Like nobody wants to be there. They're all just hoping the dude doesn't come out and tell them they need $1,000 worth of repairs. They've already been there too long. They're salty as hell. And this dude comes out, and he's like super busy. Mark Smalley was his name. He's the guy that hired me that day. He comes out, and he's like looking around. He's busy, and he like double takes. And I like stand up, and he goes, Eric? And I said, yes, sir. And he goes, you wore a double-breasted pinstripe suit to an $8 an hour interview? And I said, yes, sir. And he goes, you're hired. No interview. Took me back, signed me up. I started the next day. I was parking cars. I did that for about 3 months. I was like the first dude there. Anytime they offered me overtime, I would work. I was just super nice to people. And one day I was walking across the lot, dropping off paperwork, and there would be a group of salespeople that stood out on what they called the point. And it was an area where you would stand and you could see the car lot. So if anybody pulled up, they could pounce on
people that are waiting to pounce on you,
yes.
right? And And the best salesperson generally knew how to get to that person first, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I walked past them and I dropped the paperwork off over at the management building. And on the way back, I guess there was like a piece of trash or something blowing around, and I like ran down, picked it up, didn't think anything of it, took it inside and threw it away. And like an hour later, my manager comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, Mr. Deal wants to talk to you." Now, I worked at Deal Mercedes, Deal Toyota. So Albert Deal was the godfather. I mean, this dude, like, every day he wore like a $3,000 suit. He always had a Rolex. He was Italian. He had his hair slicked back. Like, this guy struck fear in the hearts of every employee when he came around. And I'm like, "Why does Mr. Deal want to talk to me?" And he said, "Well, we have an opening.
It's either good
or I'm done." Yeah, And so anyway, it turned out he saw me pick up this piece of trash. On the way into the building, he cussed out every salesperson out there and told them they were lazy. And there's a 21-year-old kid that, outworks you guys, blah, blah, blah. So they gave me an assistant service manager job, which was my first sales job. I didn't realize it, but that's when you bring your car into the dealership and, "Oh, hey, Mr. Barnes, it looks like you're about due for your 60,000 mile service. Generally, at this point, we recommend boom, boom, boom. We could get that done for you today. If you wanted to get it done, it's only $674. So I did that job, and I sold the living snot out of stuff. And I didn't see it as selling. Like, the mechanics would come to me and go, "Hey, dude, this guy had to get this done." And I didn't know. I've never changed my own oil. I don't know anything about cars other than how to pay for them. And he would, like, the mechanics would come up to me and go, "What needs this?" And I go, "Where's that?" They go, "It's like down here." "What's that do?" And they would say, "Well, this is what it does." And I'll go, "What happens if it breaks?" When I go to the car stop, and I go, "I'll be right back. How long does it take?" And they tell me how long it takes. And I go back to the parts guy and I go, "What parts do I need?" And I'd call the customer, go, "Leon, this thingamajiggy in your car, if it breaks, the guy showed me, like, your stuff stops working. And if that stops working, your headlights won't work. And if your headlights don't work, you can't drive the car. We'd suggest you get it done. And it's $497. I can have it done by 4:00. And that's how I sold. So I did that for about a year. And then I was like by far the youngest guy in that service department. So they all would give me their overtime. So I worked every evening. I worked every weekend. So I was working like 75 hours a week, making a crap ton of money and doing a good job. And I caught the eye of the sales manager. And he came to me and started recruiting me. And I was super intimidated. I was like, "No, I don't want to sell. Like, that's just crazy. Like, you guys force people to do stuff and like lie to people." And like, they just had a perception of what you see on TV or, whatever for sales. And he only recruited me for like 6 months. And I went out to lunch with a salesperson one day and he told me how much he made in a month. I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I made 18 grand last month." Now, this particular guy was an idiot. Like, and I'm like, "Brian, you made $18,000. Dude, if you make 18 grand, I'll make 180. And I remember after lunch, I went right back into the salesman. I was like, "Hey, I'm in." And I started on June 17th was my first day in sales. I don't know. It was like 2 weeks or something. They replaced me in my other job. And on June 17th was my first day in car sales. And that's how I got into sales.
So let's pause there for a second because there's so much good that came from that. First, I fear that a lot of including our kids, right? We try to protect them so much, and the adversity that people have to go through to get to the spot in which you got to with the sledgehammer busting out sheetrock above you to a point where you were like, "I've hit it. I'm done. I need to do something better." I'm not saying that everybody needs to go through that particular scenario. Your walk was, "I'm done. I've got to do something else." You faced some adversity and you did something about it. The second thing I took away from that was, if I share anything with my kids, the little things matter. Like, I think you and I have had this conversation. The person that returns the shopping cart to the bin, like that, this common courtesy that isn't really common anymore. And things like that get noticed. You picking up that piece of trash started this journey for where you are today, whether you know that or not.
Yeah.
That small act of caring about that dealership as if it were yours, as a $9 hour employee or wherever you were making at the time, somebody upstairs noticed. There's always someone watching, and that's something that's a lesson for all of us, especially those that are parents. Like, that stuff matters. A lot of the little things that I did, I look back and I go, that's what ultimately got me that opportunity. Not because I was the smartest, not because, I had any favor or anything along those lines. I knew somebody. It was just because of the little things and hard work that ultimately got to me to where I am today. And I took those two things from that. And then last but not least, when I started in sales, because I did know that I wanted to play professionally basketball. And when I realized that that wasn't going to happen, and I realized that early on, I was like, you know what, even if that doesn't happen, I want to be around sports, so I want to be a sports broadcaster. Well, I did that for a short amount of time and realized I couldn't make any money at it until later on in life. And I should have continued that grind, and that's okay. But I look at that particular story because when I started in sales in 2003, left sports, working for minor league sports teams, the person that referred me to that particular sales job says, that guy right there, he makes $200,000 a year. And that guy right there makes 180. And that guy over there, he makes 175. And I'm just like you. I'm going, these guys are, that guy right there who has like 8 coffee stains on his tie.
Yeah.
And that guy over there that looks disheveled, that hasn't combed his hair in probably a year. Those guys make, like, the most I'd ever made was 35 grand.
Yeah.
In sports. And I'm like, whoa. So those are my biggest takeaways from what you shared there. And I didn't want those to get glossed over because there are some of those aha moments that you have, especially when it comes to a community like this, that when you see what's possible, it changes your mind frame. Like the whole limiting belief that we sometimes have, when you see others doing it, you're going, whoop, well, if they can do it, I can do it. But sometimes it just takes seeing it to get to that point. So you're in car sales, you do well, obviously. Let's fast forward a little bit. Where does real estate come into this?
So I was in the car business. I was a salesman. I did really well, got promoted to finance, then the sales manager, then the general sales manager. And I did that for about 8 years. And in 2003, my son was born. And I'm working 1,000,000 hours. And the car business has this knack for having a high pressure, high performance, high toxic like atmosphere. A lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, a lot of like fast cars, fast women. And I was not experienced.
So you're in finance, so you don't leave until the last deal signed. So it was
literally, we call it bell to bell. It would be from 9 to 9. And so 12-hour days, 6 days a week, 72 hours. And then you got sales meeting one day and a customer that's here late. So there was plenty of times I was at the dealership till 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And so I'm literally working 75 hours a week. And it just, again, that was part of it. But the other part was I just wasn't becoming a great person. And I felt like I needed a change of scenery. I could feel myself heading down a path that wasn't going to be good for me. And now that I had this other, human that's relying on me, it felt like the right time. Again, I reached out to my dad and did some soul searching. And what we figured out was, like, I remember him saying, like, hey, you're not good at car sales. You're good at sales. And he said, why don't we look at like how you could maybe move into a different industry or something where you'd have a little bit more freedom with your time. And if you want to have more freedom with your time, but make more money, you need to sell something of higher value. You need to look at larger commissions. So I'd done a bunch of car deals with mortgage brokers, real estate agents, And I went in that direction. And what I had learned in the car business, one of the advantages we had is the understanding of finance. We sold a lot more cars than a lot of other places because we understood leasing, we understood bad credit, we understood negative equity. So I met with real estate agents and brokers, and I met with mortgage brokers, and I thought a great place for me to start was in the mortgage broker business. So I started with a mortgage company, basically cold calling refi leads, and that was how I got into real estate. Did super well with that. And like 6-7 months into that, my mentor from the car business called me. He was exiting and selling his Toyota franchise and had sort of fell into real estate and flipped a couple homes and wanted to turn a business out of it, and called me, invited me to lunch. We talked about his experience and what he thought was possible. He gave me a vision for how I would fit in. And February of 2006, I got into real estate with the guy that believed in me first. So he bought the dealership from Albert Deal, then sold the dealership, then got into real estate, and then recruited me to come flip houses with him, Craig Rich. And him and I started flipping houses in February 2006.
So a couple of years before the world changed, how were those first few years?
It was fun. It was awesome. You know, we bought a couple bad deals and sold our way out of them. And it was fun. I was learning. I was a little nervous, but like, you know, when you become a car guy for a while, there's like almost like a negative stigma to it. Like nobody goes, I really want to, no one says they want to be a car salesman when they grow up, right? That's maybe Spider-Man, firefighter, police officer, president of the United States, and like way down the list is used car guy. And maybe some of that was just my internal beliefs, but I wasn't proud of my profession. And there's plenty of amazing people in the automobile industry, but I felt like it was time for me to move on. And so I was excited. Like to me, for me to be in real estate felt like a big leap. It felt like I had really leveled up. So I was learning a lot. I was having success because of my sales experience, and we were making money. So we started, buying a couple deals off the MLS and flipped a couple houses. And then a couple years later, we started hiring some project managers. And I think our first year we did 70 transactions. Our second year we did 100 plus. And then like every year after that, we did 200. So, because we came from the car business and we would sell 300, 400 cars a month. So we just had this volume mentality, right? Because you literally sell a car and make like $1,000. So if you want to make any money, you got to sell a bundle of it. Yeah. So we kind of like unnecessarily, but applied that same sort of volume mentality to real estate, and that's how we got started. Just working hard and being hungry and trying to close every deal and make some money on every transaction.
So you guys, are doing this from nothing. You started from nothing. Obviously, your partner sold his dealership, so clearly he had some backing there to start this. When did you find out about, and I've asked others this, because I remember the time that I found out about Collective Genius after spending 11 years in corporate America. When did you find out about Mastermind communities? Because you came from the car business.
Yeah.
I came from advertising sales. We didn't have masterminds. We had manager meetings, but we didn't have mastermind. When was the first time you heard about this?
2016.
Or something like this?
2016, Craig was doing some due diligence trying to figure out like billboards, TV, direct mail, and someone introduced him to Brad Chandler. And Brad Chandler talked to Craig for like an hour and a half, whatever, and he was like, you should join Collective Genius. So 2016, Craig and I went to San Diego, California. And
I did not know it was Brad. Brad was not too far from you up in DC.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was Brad Chandler that introduced you guys.
And Brad he did, and I think still does, did deals in Baltimore, and my partner Craig lived in Baltimore.
That's right.
So they had a bunch of...
main market was DC, but they did Baltimore.
Yeah, when we first started doing deals, you'll appreciate this. We started doing deals in Baltimore. Our first agent in Baltimore was Georgiana Garceau, married to Scott Garceau, the official voice of the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was. I don't know if he still is, but yeah, so that's how they got connected. And I think she connected Craig to Brad, and then Brad connected us to CG, and here we are today.
Here we are. That first meeting in San Diego, probably La Jolla, I'm guessing 2016. What was your first impression? Truly.
Gosh, 8 years ago. See, if I had to guess, probably a smidge overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It was a lot to take in. I mean, we were doing, a fair amount of business, 200 plus transactions, and almost all of them fix and flip, which, knowing what I know today, is like a much bigger undertaking than 200 wholesale deals or 200 novation deals. So we were doing a lot of really hard work and having success with it. There was like all this other stuff. I was like, turnkey, multifamily, wholesale, like, what is all this crazy stuff? But it also felt like we belonged. I was like, dude, I remember saying, like, we would get invited to go to these meetups and stuff, but in most of those meetups or get-togethers, it was always a very asymmetrical relationship. Everybody was asking us for stuff because in our area, we were sort of the innovator and the person that was doing, the most marketing and the person that had the most employees. So it was hard for us to find value in being in a group. And for the first time, when we went to CG, the roles were reversed, right? There was this 1,000-pound elephant in the room and these just massive operators and people that were doing, a bunch of things that we wanted to do but didn't know. And I was hooked right away. I mean, I made 2 or 3 key connections when we were there. We came back and like almost immediately started really scaling direct mail and got into PPC and SEO and cold calling and all of that stuff. And like with the flip of a switch, we went from like an MLS, very operational buyer to like, wholesaling 300 homes a year in a very short period of time. And then combined our fix and flip experience. And I don't know, like a year later, someone in CG taught me turnkeys, and we sold a couple hundred turnkeys a year. So, I mean, initial response was like a buffet of value, and you just kind of pick what you want to have on your plate when you leave without overfilling it. And it's drastically changed the trajectory of our business from day one and continues to have a massive impact today.
Was there anything, you mentioned all the good stuff, especially from the marketing side? Because I know when I joined in 2015, a year before you guys did, I remember there were a lot of people in the room that were trying to figure out direct-to-seller marketing at that time, because most that were buying at the courthouse steps, like you, that was starting to dry up and had been drying up for years, especially in California, Florida. And so that part of it really helped you grow and scale. Was there anything because I know a lot of times people come into communities, they see all these shiny objects and they get a little lost because they go down the wrong path of trying to choose something. Was there anything that you guys implemented that ended up not being, good for you guys? I'm curious.
No, I don't think so. Even if it didn't work out, I think it was all a learning experience, or probably flushed out a new opportunity. I don't remember doing anything. If anything, if something didn't work out, it was advice that I didn't take.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest mistake that I would make. But no, we've had big wins, small wins, huge wins. I've never, I don't think, not that I can remember, had a situation where I came back and was introduced to something and then tried to do it and had it go horribly wrong.
Well, I asked that because, we always hear about the good. We never hear about the bad. So that's good that we didn't have any bad in this particular case. I want to go to, this community and just in general, when you join communities, our culture, like ours, our culture is all about giving. And I want to go back to, we always talk about this. We can't necessarily predict the future, but we can prepare you for it. All right. So you brought Novations to the Collective Genius in 2017. That clearly took off for you, and later on took off for a bunch of people. So we talked about this, a go-giving culture. You clearly gave a lot and have been giving ever since. Give me one thing recently. You talked earlier about how how this group has helped your business early on. Is there anything lately that you've grabbed from this group that you feel like, man, that's exactly what I needed at this given time?
Yeah, it's always, I don't, maybe it's because of the growth of our business. Maybe it's a little bit of maturity on my part, but I don't generally come back and make massive change anymore. I don't think because there's not massive opportunity or ideas that I pick up on. However, I can say that each time I come back, there's a little bit of inspiration or a little bit of innovation or a little bit of correction that I can find, whether it's Jeff Huffman and, he's given this amazing keynote about, how he's built these amazing businesses. And one of the key takeaways I took away from one of his presentations was how he gets most of his innovation in his current businesses from visiting outside businesses, right? He gets outside of his industry and finds innovation to bring back to his companies. Most recently, I would say Kevin Brown's keynote is one just a few weeks ago that comes to mind about playing the role of hero in our everyday life and how we show up in moments that matter a whole lot to the people around us. Before that, not so long ago, I remember Cameron Harold. I've taken from his second in command presentation he did and learned about how to be a better CEO to support a COO. I've taken his keynote presentation and gone down the path after reading his book of Vivid Vision. And I've crafted out an 8-page Vivid Vision document that lives and breathes inside of our organization now and guides, a lot of our decisions. So those are probably the two most recent, I think, super impactful fundamental changes that will have a very long shelf life here. So those are two, is literally behaving like a hero on a day-to-day basis. And the second part is taking this compelling vision that every entrepreneur has about what tomorrow and next month and 20 years looks like, and then articulating that in a way to your people that they can buy into and get excited about and show up and give inspired effort, not expired effort.
So this is a perfect segue because I asked every guest to give something to the audience, no different than we do it at the Collective Genius, one of our 7 meetings. You are someone that I've really seen in the last 4 years shift and make a drastic shift in not only just your approach, but your mindset. I have watched you hire and develop people, leaders. There are others that have had employees that have been on the main stage or track stages for the Collective Genius, but no one has as many leaders present at a high level that you have had. Give the audience, when that leadership of taking that true visionary seat and not just calling it what I'm a visionary. When was that moment for you that you went from, I'm just a business owner to, my job is to find talent, develop talent, and get out of their way and continue to show them the way? When did that shift for you, that leadership focus?
And it's funny, I said this today. Someone asked me a similar question, and before I forget, what I want to tell you is I think my journey with leadership has been this, is that I don't know. Someone's like, well, when's that all end? When will I notice the benefit and when will I be over? And the answer was, I think you'll notice right away if you reflect correctly and you celebrate the small milestones. And the other answer is it will never stop. You'll just start losing better people. I think what happens is, I was talking about this today, is I think there was a tipping point for me where after being in the business for 10 years and coming from the car business where turnover is just rampant, right? It's literally 100% annually. There's just massive turnover, particularly in sales. And I'd been in the business maybe 10 years and had experienced almost 100% turnover 3 times. And I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And done meant I'm not going to rebuild. I'll get small. And then that felt like super counterintuitive to me. And I was having an internal struggle with that. And oddly enough, we had a seller appointment and I met a guy, Mike Falco, who had been to CG with me. It's been 5-6 years, but he was selling his mother's house. And I met him at the estate and we made a deal and we started talking, and he was a EOS coach. And I hired him as a coach. And then like 2 months in, I realized the significance of what he was teaching me. And I also realized I didn't want to do it. So I hired him. And he went from my coach to my CFO. We had a lot of really good success. That was like right when I first joined CG. So all these great ideas I have, he was a master at implementing and facilitating change and communicating across the organization why something was changing and how it was going to impact them. And he was amazing. And that was probably a tipping point for me where I made a significant investment. I mean, guys making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that came right out of my pocket. And that was a tipping point for me probably 7 years ago, where I stopped like just caring about deals and realized that there was like an actual, like owning a business and running the business are two different things. And that was the first eye opener that I had when I hired like my first executive, and he had come from a strong corporate background and was very, very focused on systematizing the things that we do, where I operated off of like a legal pad, sticky note, screenshots of text messages for 10 years up to that. And a great memory. I've always had a pretty good memory, but it's not scalable.
Well, I was going to ask you, and I can still ask you here for book recommendations, but I want to ask a more specific question because you are someone that you mentioned it never stops, it never ends. You'll just end up having to replace better talents. And I have seen you dedicated to the craft. Our sons and daughters play sports, and specifically basketball, and we're always looking at details, little things, and trying to support them getting better. I see you supporting your own like quest of becoming the best leader that you can by reading a ton. Like you are in the last few years, I've just consistently seen you read and also share with your team and others. Is there one or two that started this journey that you're like, these are like the foundation of where the leadership journey quest that I started?
Yeah, I think like when I think of foundation, I think of early. However, like I think you should read and seek insight from books that fit where you currently are, like where you are in your individual leadership journey, where you are in your business. So like I remember my high school story I told you, like I didn't read books when I had to, right? Like I literally had homework assignments to read and do book reports, and I just refused because I didn't get anything out of them. I didn't see how they were going to improve my life. And when I first hired my consultant, and then shortly after through CG hired Sharper, who came in and gave us a more robust implementation of EOS. They had me read The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And that's like a pretty elementary book that gives you like an eye-opening explanation of like the 5 core fundamentals of building a team that produces desirable results. So that was probably an early one. That was like a good read. It was a light read. It made a lot of sense because Patrick Lencioni tells it in the context of a fable. It's got like a little entertainment to it. And that is kind of the one that got me hooked, where I was like, I can't believe I just got all of that wisdom that I can apply from a flipping 234-page book. And I didn't hate it. It was like relatively enjoyable. At that point, I was listening to all of my books, and it was pretty easy. So that was an early one that I read that had an immediate impact on my organization.
I think the title matters less, although that is a great one from a foundation standpoint. The biggest takeaway I got from that answer is one that I've heard in doing podcasts now. That's very common. It's reading the right book at the right time for where you are. Because I'll be honest, when I go to a meeting, there will be 15 different book titles that people will throw out there that they're reading. And I have found myself with this bookshelf over here with 30 books that I started and never finished.
Yeah.
Because they just weren't the books that I needed at that time for my business or for where I'm at within CG.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like, for me, as someone that, like you, didn't love reading growing up, but love reading what I read. I mean, you know this about me. I know a bunch of useless trivia. Where did I get that from? Well, I got that from reading things that I enjoyed reading.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't that I didn't love reading necessarily. I just enjoyed reading newspaper back then. That was my jam back in the day.
Yeah.
So reading the right thing at the right time is the most important thing, not just what others are reading. Ask them for the specific reason that they feel like that is a good book recommendation. And if that is what you need right now, you should read it. If it isn't, you should put it on your list and keep an eye on it for when you do have that that one particular need.
Yeah,
Any podcast or go ahead.
Yeah. For me, just to wrap up that sort of book segment would be, listen, there's a lot of things that got to happen to be able to run a successful business. And I think early on what I realized was there was no way I was going to be good, let alone great at all of these. And there was a book that I read, I don't know, 2-3 years ago called Who Not How. And that was an eye-opener for me that said, listen, I don't have to be great at all this stuff. What's the one thing that I can be great at, where I could get all of these other things done by amazing people that are great at all of these things that I'm never going to be good, let alone great at, and quite frankly, don't enjoy doing anyway, right? Because there's operations, there's finance, there's planning, there's property management, there's project management, there's marketing, there's all of this stuff.
Right.
And what I figured is if I could become an exceptional leader, an influencer of people, I would have the luxury of being able to have the best of the best in each one of these other categories. So I've literally dedicated like almost all of my reading to leadership and influence, which are kind of the same thing. Sales is leadership, leadership is sales, influence is sales, and sales is influence. So literally all of the reading I do, and that compounding effect over probably the last 3 years where you won't find me without a leadership or influence book in my hand. Yeah. That compounding effect has paid off well. And I've really doubled down on the leadership and influence thing, because no matter what it is that pops up and where I need help and where I need labor and where I need support, if you can lead and you can sell, you'll always have, the opportunity to get the best people to come work alongside of you.
Yeah, it's you're working towards mastery, and what you're describing is the same journey that someone in martial arts starts off with their white belt and making their way to their black belt. I think that's how it works. But that what you're talking about is laser focused mastery. So that's what you're working towards. What do you feel like is your superpower? Like right now, you're working towards mastery in those two things, and that journey will never be perfected. You'll continue to sharpen that. But what do you feel like is the number one thing that you is your main superpower?
I think the best way to explain it is, it used to be my instincts, or I would describe it as my instincts, but I have a unique ability of being able to pick up on language and tone and recognize when something is said that is counterproductive. It's out of alignment. It doesn't serve them. It doesn't serve me. I think it's out of pocket, right? And that can show up a number of different ways. And I have I think a superpower of being able to gain influence through understanding. And most of the understanding that I get is through asking good questions. And the questions that I ask come from really having a sense of care and desire to understand what it is that somebody's going through and what caused it and why they're interpreting this way and why they're responding this way, and then taking it and spinning it in a different perspective that actually moves them forward. As I've worked on leadership and communication influence, I stand here and I tell you this, and I would die on this hill that 75% of people lack the ability to properly articulate how they feel and what they want. And 95% of the people that they're talking to aren't listening.
Mm-hmm.
So think about that. If 3/4 of people are saying something different than actually how they feel or what they want, and it's being at best misinterpreted by someone that only heard maybe half, we're all running around acting on assumptions and misunderstandings, and we end up like, a mess. And I think I was placed here by God with a unique ability to say, hold on for a second. Here's what I heard. That doesn't make sense. What is it that you really want? Is thinking about it that way going to move you closer or further away to what you want? And have you considered this? So I think my superpower is getting to the root cause, or the core cause or problem behind something, and then using leverage and influence and good the ability to ask good questions and not allow people to BS or snowball me with enthusiasm or anything other than the truth. Like I think I was placed here to get to the truth. And when that happens, man, like every relationship you could imagine, if everybody just walked around and told the truth. And I don't, by the way, I'm not saying that people are lying. I think we actually, how many people have actually mastered the human language? Like nobody. So we grab these low hanging phrases and words and things that other people use to try and maybe describe what it is that we want. And we're not 100% comfortable maybe being direct with people. So we take like a soft way of saying what we want, and then we dilute it down even more because we don't want to maybe, damage our ego or, intrude on someone else. And, I've taken a direct interest in mastering like human influence and communication and leadership and, getting to the truth, and then, giving people back that truth and saying, hey, now that we know what we know, now what can we do about it? How can we improve the situation? And,
It's a unique superpower, Eric, but I will say that it is truthfully, like I couldn't have articulated that any better. If I were to say what your superpower is, it would end up. You're like the human eraser for what someone is saying because of nervousness or trying to hide something. There's a lot of word salad stuff out there these days. If everybody could just text what they were thinking and edited it and really truly got down to what they were trying to say, I think the communication would be much, much better. But sometimes, you're in front of somebody and you just get into word salad because you're nervous or, and you just have this ability to slow people down and question what you heard.
Yeah.
Because it might not be aligned with what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that came from many years of sales, listening to people tell you, I'm just looking, especially in the car sales. You drove to the dealership just to look during sales hours. Okay. Like you had this, this ability developed over time because people would flat out lie to your face while knowing that they need a car.
Yeah.
And I think that over time developed. And if you're not going to have a comic book or a Marvel character created after that unique superpower anytime soon, but it will serve you well. It will serve you well and those around you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Give me one thing that even I don't know about you. There's got to be one thing.
I am deathly scared of birds.
Like any bird?
Yeah. Like a
I did not know this.
Scares
Small birds, big birds, it doesn't matter.
all of them. Just
All of them.
every
Not
single one.
spiders, not snakes, birds.
Yeah, like you can smash like a snake can't run. It can't, like birds flap and they peck and they like.
How many times has that actually happened to you?
Never, because I'm on my toes. That's why. Like,
Yeah.
I'm on
I
my
guess that's
toes.
the way I am with wasp, and they're smaller. So I guess
Yeah,
anything that can sting me, I guess I'm like that as well.
yeah,
You also have this thing with food that is a little different.
yeah.
Like you anything that is not normal to what you know as normal, like you won't touch a carrot dip unless it's orange. Like that's unique. Like you won't even try it if it's purple or
Would you
different color.
Would you
than
drink
orange.
purple milk?
No.
Okay.
But if
Turns out it's
I,
not so weird after all.
I would try it if I were told that it was milk and that it was good for me.
I just
would
told you it was
try.
milk. I said, would you drink purple milk? And you said no. So
I would try it. I would try it if you didn't give me purple milk. Sounds like there's something wrong with it. You didn't give me
exactly. Same thing with purple carrots.
well, purple carrots are. It's a carrot that's just a different color, but it's just as nutritious for you.
What about green cheese? Like it was yellow, and you've always known cheese to be yellow, and then it sits in the fridge, and you go to pull it out, and now it's green.
Well, we know that to be more than likely that it's gone bad, right?
Okay, so if you have an orange carrot, and then it comes out and it's purple, I believe it's gone bad. I actually don't think this is weird at all. I think you and I are completely on the same page. We just haven't had a chance to dig into it maybe enough.
But
so
it's just like, there are dogs, right? There are different species of dogs.
yeah,
Each species has different colors. There's
if you had a dog that was foaming at the mouth, you gonna pet it or not?
Probably not.
Okay, but maybe it's just a different species of dog, or is that dog gone bad? This is what I'm saying. Like I really don't think
a purple carrot has not gone bad. It's just a different variety of carrot.
Got it.
You've seen yellow tomatoes.
I have.
You might not like tomatoes, but there's yellow varieties.
I love tomatoes.
So
I love
just
tomatoes. I should prefer the yellow ones. A little sweeter, if you ask me.
There's yellow watermelon.
Yeah.
Right. You probably
purple.
No, it's the purple thing. So you did not like Prince in the 80s then, as what?
But I like my music stars in purple. I don't like my vegetables purple. It's had it been yellow, had it been a different color, but the purple, it looked bruised and bad.
Okay, it's the color. I get it now. All right. All right. So if people want to have these type of high intellectual conversations with you, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh man, the best place to connect with me is on Instagram or Facebook. I'm pretty active on there. I put out a fair amount of content. I think the reason it was difficult for me to come up with something no one knows about me, my son would tell you it's because I am outside on social media, as he would say. I literally
everything.
Pretty much. It's one of the keys to leadership is being transparent and vulnerable, by the way. But yeah, Instagram's the best place to keep up with me. It's Eric Brewer Invest.
Anything right now? Obviously there's Novations, the Brewer method. Anything else that you guys have that you want the people to know about?
We're having a lot of success. We have over 100 clients that we're helping with sales and operations. I have about 30 leadership clients that I work with on a monthly basis. So if you want help with sales, or if you want help with leadership and some of the stuff that we talked about, if you're experiencing turnover and you seem to be losing better and better people every few years, I think the best thing to do is to catch up with me on social media, take a look at what I'm doing there, and I share a lot of it on there. And if you need help with sales or operations or leadership, look me up and we can have a chat and see if I can help you.
I can tell the audience this, that Eric is somebody that will actually, when you reach out, well, he's not shy about communicating. And obviously, if you want to be in a room, with Eric and his team and others like Eric, the Collective Genius is here for you, 4 different levels. Eric has been a part of our leadership team for a reason. If you listen to this podcast, you clearly can see the journey, the leadership. I don't know many people that are better in sales and hiring and developing than Eric Brewer. So I appreciate you, my friend, joining me. I'm a better person, better human being because of you. And it means a lot, your friendship and helping, this community continue to grow. And there's so many lives that you've changed in this group because of your continue wanting to learn and share. That's the biggest piece that I'm always the most impressed with, is being able to not only share, but do it in a way where people can actually get it and go 0 to 1 and go and implement it. So I can't thank you enough for your friendship and your leadership. And for those, again, that want to reach out, Eric's information, it's simple. Just find him on Instagram or Facebook. And if you want more information on the Collective Genius, you can find us at our website, colectivegenius.com. Please, if you also like this, make sure you share, like, and subscribe this podcast. We look forward to seeing you on the next one next week. See you then.
Are you ready to scale your real estate business? Visit thecollectivegenius.com, where real estate investors come to scale. Subscribe to the Collective Genius podcast and hit the bell icon to be notified when our next episode releases. And thanks for listening.